if we're talking about authentic relationships, I would imagine that relationships, it's a fluid experience, right? It's not something that's just like, an on and off switch, like not
Sure.
engaged, engaged, like non-donor, donor.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
nice
that's
as
right.
that sounds great, but it's just not reality. It's like like real relationships. So if that's the case, what do you think the progression looks like? Right. So we're talking about building trust and building relationships beyond what you would find in a textbook, right? So I'm not saying like opening up the manual, page 86 to 105. This is what it should look like. Just from your experience, what are some things that you think are some key benchmarks or key things that you found in your experience? It might not be the same for everybody, but in your experience that show that progression of that relationship throughout, going from someone who's new to you, new to the organization, and becoming a significant donor.
Yeah, that's another really good question. And you're right. Of course, it's not fluid. Or I'm sorry, it is fluid. It is not binary. And it is absolutely something that, you can find some steps in a textbook, but it's really it becomes a gut thing over time. And there's certain things that you want to hear. And I want to talk a lot about some of those strategies right now. I think that this is a great place where I can sort of unload a couple of strategies for people. So the first thing I want to talk about is building trust is really the equivalent of what we call in our industry cultivation, right? And cultivation is one of the five pillars of donor centered fundraising. Right? So we have qualification, cultivation, solicitation, stewardship, and so this is really where we put all that together and where we start to build that trust in the beginning of this. And so, as we're cultivating people, if you take my previous example from the last answer, where I said our relationship building was getting us the puzzle pieces, really what this does is take those puzzle pieces and start to put them into place, right? Think of like Candyland. It looks like the actual map. Now we take these pieces that we've learned and we put them into the map and we start to do this. So the way I like to do this and start to build trust is one thing and I'll start with this because I think it's counter to the way that a lot of people choose to do it. A lot of people in organizations like to talk about why we're the winner, why we're the best, why we're so good at what we do. And that's really where you start the conversation by saying, this is it. And the thing is this is where you get, the $500, $1,000, maybe $5,000 gifts where people say, good job, shake hands. Sounds like you're doing a great job. You've really told me everything I needed to know. I'm going to go ahead and make a gift. And that's great on a certain level, but it cannot, it won't really get you to where you need to be to have the deeper conversations. In order to do that, you have to start focusing on the problem. And so what I mean by that is, what is the problem in the world or in your community or in your sphere that your organization or you in particular as a development person are trying to solve? Talk about the scope of that problem, right? Who does it affect? Who does it impact? What do those people look like? What do their nights and days look like, right? Are there certain people around the world that are a complete subset, different from who you expect, that also are getting impacted by this? Are there things that have adverse reactions that we could be controlling, but we're not, and we haven't even thought of that yet? So the scope of this problem gets people to say, wow, I've had my little slice of this, but I didn't understand just how big this was. I didn't understand that it was something that there's an incredible need for, and then you shift from talking about the scope of the problem to why the organization is uniquely positioned to address that problem. So why us, right? Well, because we have this many partners, we know these particular people, our people at this organization have this kind of experience, so not yet saying why you're most successful. We're still not talking about the winner. We're talking about why are we the ones to capture this incredibly complex problem. And that is something where you start to get a lot of traction where people start saying, wow, now they start feeling like it's we, right? I'm now engaged in the problem as a potential donor. I have understood this is an issue. That's your scope. And then I'm in the right room. I'm with the right people. That's you being uniquely positioned. The next natural conversation is, so what have we tried so far? And this is where you say, look, here's what we've tried so far. Let me explain why it hasn't gotten to where we need it. And what you're sharing in this conversation is you're eliminating all the other avenues that essentially leave you with the need for unrestricted. Because we do get federal or government grants in some cases, but those take so much time. A third of my time is spent on reporting requirements and all this other kind of stuff. And and I just don't have time to do my work, or I need to know the answer before I can even do the experiment. That's a lot of complaints that I get now at Emory, and that makes it really challenging to get that kind of funding. Talking about why funding from a certain foundation can be tough. These are part of the reasons we haven't gotten there, but also the solutions we've come up with really have fallen short because we haven't had that flexibility or that partner that can move with us and be dynamic as we try new things from the uniquely positioned smart people that we have on board. And the last thing I like about that too is it gets all the questions that what you should do questions, gets those out of the way too. Nobody says to you at this point, oh, you should hire this person, or I know a guy that does this. Part of what we're talking about in this step 3 here is why we already have these right people on board, but why they just don't have the fuel that they need. So after this question, it naturally begs a question session where we get donors talking about why is it that I should maybe I should participate in this, and what is it that you might need to move that needle, right? So this is now you're talking about 3 phases that get a donor deeply engaged and cultivated to understanding their purpose and why they need to be there. So that's one tip I'll give you, is to talk about the problem in the world, not the solution.